So last year in the bubble, I thought the pandemic P was incredible. Like the jokes and memes that came from Paul George and the Clippers. Man, look, it was incredible. It got so great that even Dame Lillard and CJ McCollum, who had gotten eliminated in that same bubble playoffs, they even had to jump on social media and be a part of the memes that were going on, specifically at Paul George. Kawhi got a little bit of it. The Clippers got it as a team. Paul George deserved every bit of that. And here's why I believe that. I felt like Paul George failed the Clippers as a comparable second option to Kawhi Leonard. So I don't understand this, but it has been happening. You know, with the Clippers down now 3-2, when the Suns play great and win, for some odd reason, all the criticism that the Clippers get goes to Paul George. And I've been scratching my head every game, and this is before Paul George just went out with his team season on the line and dropped 41 points and 13 rebounds on the road to force this series back to Los Angeles for Game 6. I thought this same way before it. I didn't understand the criticism to Paul George. If you're going to be specific in games and say, yo, PG, you got to make free throws, because he did miss free throws in pivotal Game 2s and Game 3s and Game 4s. He did miss a lot of free throws. I'll give you that. But if you're going to say Paul George played bad overall, I'm going to respond to you and say, I don't think you know what the hell you're talking about in regards to basketball. Paul George ain't been playing bad at all. Paul George has a lot on his plate right now. Newsflash, if you think Paul George is a number one option and you're holding him to the standard of a number one option, that's your fault, not his. As a number two who was forced into a role as a number one in the middle of a playoff run, as Kawhi Leonard went down with injury, with, by the way, a head coach up into this year that many had pretty much crapped on his resume because everybody was like Ty Lue was only successful because he coached LeBron James, his first year as the Clippers head coach. If you would have told me that this team would even be remotely competitive against the number one seed, Utah Jazz, and defeat them, and then remotely competitive against the Phoenix Suns, and Kawhi ain't been around for the last 7-8 games with a knee sprain, I would have called you crazy. But they have. And the way y'all repay Paul George is by saying that he's playing bad? What? Like, he's missed some shots. He's clearly tired because he's now asked to be. Have y'all watched what Paul George has been asked to do for the Clippers? He's going to give you double-digit rebounds right now. He's having to be the point guard of the team. He's having to be the facilitator of the team, the number one playmaker of the team. It's pretty much 75-25 him on the ball, and then Reggie Jackson on it about 25-30% of the game as well. So, damn, I needed him to give me rebounds. That's what Giannis does. I need him to go give me 25-30 points. I mean, I'm asking him to do essentially what Kevin Durant does. And I need him to be my number one facilitator, go give me 7-8 assists a game for my team in the playoffs against the Phoenix Suns, who's been one of the hottest teams in the postseason. Okay, that's what LeBron does. Paul George has been asked to do all of that for this Clippers team right now that doesn't have a comparable number two. Their number two is Reggie Jackson or Marcus Morris. No disrespect to any of those gentlemen, but there's reasons why both of those dudes have been unable to find a consistent home in the NBA. And they both balling right now. But they ain't been able to find a consistent home throughout their tenures in the NBA. Fam, give Paul George some credit. He's playing hard. And he's tired. Now, if you're going to make the case that PG should have stepped up and been a better number two, I'm with that to Kawhi. Right? Because you know you remove Kawhi from this, you see how much responsibility the Clippers were asking of like two or three guys. But I'm looking at this Clippers team and I'm thinking to myself, they have no business competing with Phoenix right now. None whatsoever. But they're doing it. and they're one game away from forcing a decisive Game 7 against Chris Paul, Devin Booker, and the Suns. Devin Booker ain't been in that spot before. It's been some years since CP3 has played in that spot. DeAndre Ayton's young. Cam Payne, Mikal Bridges young. Jay Crowder's been there. But I'm just saying, like, you got a chance if you can win this one home game. I just want to say this. Paul George ain't the problem. That's how I feel. Anybody who thinks that, I don't understand your perspective on this one. I don't think Paul George is the problem. If anything, I think Kawhi Leonard is more of the problem than anything. Like, we'll talk about that in another video, but I think it's ridiculous to me that as a fan of this game, as a reporter of this game, we're not getting real updates on this man's condition. Blame Kawhi if you're going to blame anybody, or blame Kawhi's body, or the fact that he's been unable as a superstar in his league to stay healthy for his team more times than not. What is this, the third season of the last 5 or 6 in which Kawhi's season is going to end on the mend? He's done. We know it. He's not returning. Even if the Clippers make it to the finals, I don't think he's coming back. When that man sat in that stance for Game 3, I knew it was over. I knew it was over. I knew his season was over. Paul George and the Clippers have had to combat what is Kawhi Leonard, the leader, and they're still one game away from a decisive Game 7 in the Western Conference Finals. Why are we criticizing them? I'm lost.